Hi, I'm Edward, and this is Moving Matter, where I talk about how we can feel more with the soul and think less through the ego. So today's video is about soul fracturing. Basically, soul fracturing is where a person has undergone or experienced really deep trauma. Trauma so terrible, so horrible, so violating of one's true sovereignty, true self, that it fundamentally creates a break and it severs a connection between the soul and the ego. So effectively, the pain, the suffering, causes the ego to shield the person's soul, because that's what the ego does. The ego's job is to insulate the person and protect them from unwanted experiences. However, with soul fracturing, it's just such a deep break in the person's, in the person's life, in the person's experience, that effectively it gives the it effectively severs the connection between the soul and the ego. The soul is always there. However, it creates a blockage, an energetic blockage, a barrier that effectively puts the person, isolates them into the ego, and that means that they can no longer, or they can feel like they can no longer empathically feel. They're effectively locked into their masculine energies, which is the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, which is adrenaline. So this can happen. Generally, it happens in childhood, but it can happen at any age. And the types of people that have experienced this, people who have been victims of, say, rape, sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse, violence, alien abductions, satanic ritual abuse, all these sorts of things. And so with soul fracturing is something that I've personally experienced. So I know how this works. I've been there. I spent my entire life basically soul fractured, not knowing, until 2020 in May, when I was attending a frequency meditation group on a weekly basis with some psychics, and they alerted me to this. Like, they brought it up. They became aware of it through my field. So effectively, what happened is my soul spoke to their soul, and then had indicated to them I was ready for this information to come out. And so late 2018, I'd already started my spiritual awakening, and I had been very rapidly learning how to heal my body, following my intuition, learning how to address malnutrition through eating supplements, organic foods, and so forth, removing toxic foods from my diet. And so in 2020, I had already got my body into a very good state where it was really healed and ready and nourished and ready to address this fundamental underlying issue, this repressed trauma. And so, excuse me. So when I went through this, it took me. I went home from the meditation group not really understanding, what these psychics were talking about. They'd indicated to me it was very important that this issue come up to the surface to be dealt with, and they said that it was very painful, and I wasn't aware of it, and I just was completely blank. So when I went home, I did a very deep meditation. When I was in this meditation, I became aware of the trauma. So I saw flashes, images, I saw faces, I heard voices. It was all just me replaying the events that were locked in my subconscious. And so what happened is I pieced it together. I sat down and did shadow work, so I did a lot of journaling. I was writing out how I felt, and I was shocked at how all these childhood emotions were coming up. And I was like, these are childhood emotions. Like, this is primitive. It's very, I know this. It's very, it's like I was 4.5 again, like that part of me. And so all the fractured elements, the bits that were unable to be processed at the age of 4.5, came up to the top, to the surface to be dealt with. And so the way I went about this over the next week is I went to the next frequency meditation group, and I had already, in between that time, I'd identified the person that had who was effectively a psychopath, had abused me, who had tormented me, terrorized me, because it was sheer terror in my childhood. And the next week I went to this meditation group, and at the end of it, we sat in meditation for an hour. I heard a voice. It was this man's voice, and I heard a voice saying, if you ever tell anyone about this, I'll kill you when you sleep. And straight away I was like, that's where my insomnia came from, because I had up until that point lifelong insomnia. So when I heard that voice, I was quite shocked, and I realized that this person, I had resisted. I'd resisted what his abuse. He's also violent towards me, assaulted me, because I wouldn't play it. Like, I was very resistive as a child. I was very strong, I was very tough, and so I fought back and I kicked back, and basically I didn't play into what he wanted, because he's obviously a pedophile and a psychopath. And so, unfortunately, at the time, I had a friend who was his adopted daughter, and he abused her in front of me, did terrible things, and effectively he silenced me. He programmed me at such a young age, and I was too terrorized to even talk about this issue to anyone. It was only at the age of 9, 6 or 9, it might have been somewhere in between then, that I spoke to my mother because I heard an ad on, I heard a sort of a Crime Stoppers ad on TV, which was talking about something similar to what I experienced and how the police were looking for someone, and so it triggered the trauma in the memory. But because I had been programmed and basically I wasn't able to talk about this to anyone, and I didn't know how to. When I spoke to my mum, I said to her, "Look, my mum's like, why are you so interested in that ad on TV?" And I just said to her, "Oh, look, something happened to me, and I think it's like that." And then my mother, who I didn't find this out until after she passed away in 2010. She had been a sexual abuse survivor. So what happened is, in her teenage years, she was gang raped, and again, I had no idea. So she always had a lot of anxiety, and she was my adoptive mother. So we were never close on an emotional feeling level. She was very much a mentor, a teacher. That's how she described herself to me. And so I understandably, when her son had sort of talked about something like this happening to him, that being me, she was triggered. So she was overwhelmed, and she wasn't able to address this. So she denied it, and she said that nothing happened. I was, dramatizing. I was exaggerating it. It's nothing, and basically stopped making stuff up. So I'm not angry with her because I can understand now how this happened and why she responded that way, because she was triggered and all of her trauma came up and she never had the opportunity to deal with it. So I was very lucky and grateful that I had the opportunity to actually address this issue and heal it. So when I say that soul fractures can be healed, absolutely they can be. It's not that difficult really, but there's a lot of work involved in the sense of you have to face your demons and you have to face a lot of fear, and it can feel insurmountable at the time. But once you do it, you get through it. No pain, no gain. You're healed. And so it took me about approximately a year to heal it, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I was following my intuition. So effectively what I did is I firstly confronted the issue. So as I mentioned earlier, I did shadow work, I journaled, I allowed myself to express all the anger. And I had a lot of anger. And I think that one of the problems is when people are doing shadow work and healing work, I feel that people don't necessarily allow themselves to appreciate and own their anger. So for me, it was really like I knew intuitively I cannot resist this. If I have terrible dark thoughts about hurting this person, what I want to do to them, it's okay to put that on paper and to get it out there, because I've experienced this trauma and I was a victim of it, and so I needed to express that. And so as a child, I was obviously angry. I wanted to fight back, but I was too small. I was tiny, So I did that, and I had no shame in doing that. I wrote down all sorts of terrible stuff. Sure, if the police saw my, sure if the police saw my, saw my book, my journal, they'd probably be a bit alarmed. But that's okay, because I didn't have any guilt. I didn't have any, I wasn't going to go off and do these things like hurt this person. But I was angry, and I knew intuitively I have to get that down, because if I block that, if I resist that, if I create a wall and I don't allow myself to re-experience this pain now consciously, it's just going to get dumped back in my into the recesses of my subconscious mind, which we don't want. So I wrote down every nasty thing, and afterwards it was like, whoa, there's a lot of anger there. But I was okay with that, and I did not let myself feel any shame or guilt, and it was very healthy, and I got it out in a very constructive way. So I'd say for anyone that's trying to heal, or who is healing soul fracture, or who suspects they may have one, it's really important to document all this and to write it out, and perhaps just be a bit circumspect about hiding your journal, your shadow work journal, because other people may not understand. But it's totally fine to have those feelings. It doesn't matter what type of soul fracture you've had. It doesn't matter. It's very important to put the anger out. Otherwise, anger just flips into depression, and you don't want to be depressed. Chances are you've probably gone through a lot of depression like I had. And so as I wrote down all of this, I was I wrote everything down, and then towards the end I felt sadness and every it's like the seven. I don't like the number 7, as I've talked about in other videos, and so there's probably a more accurate way of saying this, but the 7 stages of grief, it's like that type of thing where you write it all out. And I was quite shocked at how I dumped it on paper. I think I did like 30 pages of just constant writing. And so I sat there and I was like, oh, whoa. And then once I did that, I knew I had to go to the police and actually I had to report this. I just felt it was so important for me to do that. And when I went to the police, it took me So I had the week. Yeah, it took me another week to go to the police. I went multiple times, and I felt like this overwhelming feeling that I was going to get in trouble. And so I felt like a child who was going to get in trouble for talking about something that he shouldn't, because that's how I'd been programmed. And so I had this guilt, and this shame, and this, like, I was doing a bad thing, even though I knew I wasn't. I'd done nothing wrong. And so it took me multiple goes to go to the police station. I ended up like drinking 2 coffees on a Sunday night at like 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. And I went down there. I don't drink coffee, so I was just like a manic mess. I was sweating. I was anxious. But I went there and I spoke to this really great constable, and just said I need to talk to someone. I need to make a report. And I was shaking. I think she probably thought I was a drug addict or something. But I went in there and explained it all, and she was amazing at the way she helped me. So she didn't lollycoddle me. She didn't sit there and, oh, are you okay? She went hard on me. Like, she's like, I need this, tell me this, and how did this work? Because I was struggling to get it all out. Even though I'd spent this time on paper, this is the first time I'd really spoken to someone that was a stranger about this issue and actually had a conversation with them. And I was just, so much garbage emotion was coming up to be dealt with. And it was traumatizing again. But that's the point. You're pulling the trauma out. So every time you resist, you're effectively blocking it back down again. So I knew I had to keep getting out. And we sat there for 3 hours documenting it all, because obviously it's a very serious accusation. And then the person that was leveled it, I found out that he's overseas over subsequent weeks. And my report was taken. Then it was referred off to another area of the police who handle this type of thing, like the sexual offences area. And then I had to go through the process again with them, and I was warned about that. But every time I went through it, honestly, my nerves got calmer and calmer, and it's like I was pulling it out more and more. It's just I was fishing deep and getting all this stuff out, and bits and pieces came back to me over time, and other flashes of memory, and I was able to reconstruct this. And every time I could reconstruct it, and I put all this stuff down and documented it, I felt so much better. And so it was for about a year, up until July 2021, and I ended up I had to go and meet this detective in Knoxfield and Melbourne. So I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. Knoxfield, where the head office is that handles all this stuff, one of the head offices. So I sat down with him and we documented everything again and signed off on it. And it was interesting because at that point, I'd said to him, look, I'm not shaking anymore. Like, I still had a few shakes and things when I talked about this and when I wrote it. But as I said, I went from being this like manic, sweating, anxious, shaky mess to, when I sat with him, I was just like, I'm nothing. Like, I'm writing my signature, signing away, and made a few corrective points, and he changed it, but I was fine. And so that's obviously the first step of what I did to heal it. That would be what I would call the mental aspect. Even though all of this is spiritual, but the mental aspect was being mentally processing it all and like downloading it and putting it to paper and writing it out, talking to people about it, and then the next aspect would be what I call the spiritual aspect. So the spiritual aspect involved me. I received guidance from my higher self, advising me to go to it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up and I heard a voice say to me, psychics are who you see to learn about your soul plan, and to get advice on what next steps you need to take. Shamans are who you see to balance your dark and light energies so that you can be whole and complete again. I was like, what the hell does that mean? But I realized I need to find a shaman. I'd never been to a shaman. I didn't know what a shaman, like, I had a vague idea as to what they did, but I'd never been to one. So I was very lucky that I found a fantastic shaman here in Melbourne, and his name is Sheriff Torlis. So he runs a practice in Brunswick. I think it's called Shamanic Energy Medicine or something like that in Brunswick. Really good. For anyone's interested, I'll put the link in the description below. But effectively, I spent all of 2021. From the end of October 2020 to to about October 2021 with him, intensely doing sessions every month. And I was amazed at like the work it did, because I'd been told by the psychics who I originally saw back in May 2020. They said to me once I went to the police, because I went there every week to do my psychic meditation. This was my frequency meditation. Once I went to the police, which was on June 28th, I think it was, 2020, I didn't tell anyone. I just sort of kept it to myself. And so I went to the police, and then within a few days I went and did my meditation group. And they said to me, they said to me on June 28th, you did something to balance your masculine and feminine energies, and that's the most important thing you've ever done, and it's going to change everything for you for the better. And everything, and the psychic, she said to me, everything that you've done up until that point, it's been difficult. You've had almost had success. It's been pulled away from you. You've been resisted. You've just had attracted trauma and problems, even though you didn't want that. But now that you've balanced your masculine and feminine energies, everything's going to flip. And every time it looks like something bad's going to happen, it's going to flip in your favor. And she was right. Like from that moment on, because I got that balance back and I cleared that trauma, because you attract what you are, not what you want. So in the law of attraction, you can think whatever you want up here, it doesn't matter, but you attract what you are energetically, vibrationally. So if you've got junk in your subconscious like trauma, it doesn't mean it's your fault. What it means is you've attracted that. You've got to clear it. Once you clear it, you stop attracting those sorts of cycles of just negative energy. And so for me, I'd clear that. And so I didn't even grasp the magnitude of what I'd done in terms of addressing this issue. Like I just had no idea, but now I'm like, whoa, it totally makes sense. So yeah, once I had that realization, I was like, oh my God, I've really balanced my masculine and feminine energies. So the masculine is the sympathetic nervous system and the feminine is the parasympathetic nervous system. So masculine is fight or flight, adrenaline, and feminine is rest and digest, which I'm not quite sure what the opposite to adrenaline is yet. It could be oxygen or it could be DMT. I'm not sure. I need to converse with my higher self. But anyway, jumping back to what I was saying earlier about I'd spent all these sessions with the shaman, and I had an interesting experience because the first session he did a lot of work clearing my field and everything. And your field is your soul permeating throughout your body. So they call it a field. It's your energy field. So when you clear it with an expert, and I was able to really feel empathically for the first time because of addressing this trauma. I could feel like the work he was doing on me. I was like, shit, this is really working. I was having huge realizations, huge elevations in my consciousness, and I'm still having them. But I was so like in awe of how this all worked. And so it was interesting because after about the third session, I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning and I heard my higher self talking to me, and I was seeing like an example of two people arguing, and I was hearing a voice say about this psychopath who caused this trauma in my childhood, saying, he's going to go to jail, he's done terrible things and all sort of stuff. And I was really confused because I felt like I was in the middle of an argument between two people, and the person that done this trauma was I could feel the energy. It was very scared, very threatened, really anxious, really nervous. His other energy was very strong and very pure and positive and loving. And then I was sort of confused. So I was like, who's talking? What is this? And then I just heard, it's not you, it's him. And I was like, hold on. And I was like, have I got some sort of connection with this person? Has this event created a link that I'm unaware of? And I can't explain it because it was intuitive. But as soon as I booked in my next session with the shaman, Sharif, I explained to him the situation. I said, is it possible I have a connection with this person energetically? And he sort of looked at me and he's like, oh, I don't think so and everything. And then he checked and he goes, oh my God, there's a chord, that's what they call it in shaman speak, a chord. And I was like, okay, I get the concept, but I had no idea what that meant. So he said to me, there's a chord, we've got to cut this. And he goes, it's like a tree trunk, it's ancient, like it's been here your whole life and it's draining you. So we cut this cord, and after that, I can't explain, but it's like I had more of my capacity back, like energetically, spiritually. So after that, I just had massive shifts in my consciousness, my psychic abilities increased, intuition increased, and that whole issue effectively was just dealt with. Once I cut that cord, I'd cut this drain on me, And so I learned a lot about, like I cut a lot more cords after that, and each one I was like, whoa. I reclaimed my sovereignty, I reclaimed my abilities back, my power. And so more and more, my awareness of reality, my perception of reality increased. And more, I was seeing through so many false layers of reality, so many false perceptions, so many deceptions, I'd call it, just in everyday life. It could be something as simple as seeing something on TV, and I could sense that's false. But what that news report is saying is not accurate, or it's being manipulated. Whereas before, I wouldn't even be aware of it. And so to have these massive shifts in my conscious awareness was amazing. And I was also able to, when I was talking to people, they'd mention things or they were stuck on something, and intuitively an answer would come up for me, like it would just snap. And I'd say, oh, what about this? So I was able to tap into my feelings more. And so my feelings, or our feelings, are the source of our power. So the soul speaks the language of love, which is expressed as feeling, which is vibration. So that's another thing. As I cut these cords and do this work, I started getting like all this guidance was coming through from my higher self. I was getting all these amazing little like quotes and things like false personalities create false realities, which is about the ego, and it was incredible to hear. And I'll do a video on that another time. Another really good one, that I heard regarding my experience of the trauma and how it'd been repressed and how it's locked into my masculine energies, which is the ego. I heard before I became fully aware of it, I did hear something at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it said to me, what I heard was they lock the door and throw away the key. I was like, what does that mean? And I heard the word skeleton key. But then as I went through this whole process, as I outlined earlier, becoming aware of the trauma, the events, going to the police, confronting it, because effectively for me, I couldn't confront this person, but by going to the police, I confronted, and it was all energetically done, it was vibrational. So I confronted the issue by addressing and going to the police and having the courage and the strength to put it on paper and to get all out of me. And then really over that year, as I said earlier, from July 2020 to May 2020 to July 2021, the issue was that was done. Like there'll still be follow-up work, and when this person, because he's overseas in Asia doing terrible things, the police are all over it, and the federal police are aware of it, and there's other people now that they've identified that have been affected as well. So it's like a big deal. And it was interesting because my psyche builders are telling me that this person is actually involved in one of those underground, what do you call those networks that do all this sort of stuff and on a professional level, which is even more disturbing. But the fact that I dobbed this guy in and like put all the information there, I laugh because he has no idea, but this particular individual is basically screwed as we want. And the police didn't say too much about this whole thing, but they said we had no idea this person even existed. He wasn't on our radar. And they said, oh, thanks to you, look, we can't say too much, but we can say he's on our radar now, and we're very aware of it. And now we've got a lot of resources we're putting into this. I did ask him, I said, my hunch tells me it's not just him, is it? There's a whole group of them. I said, oh, we can't say, but what we can say is where there's smoke, there's fire. So that was pretty much a yes. Obviously, it's a big deal now. It's with the federal police, which is fantastic. So hence why I don't mention names or too much detail. But the point being that I realized that by me having the courage and to deal with this soul fracture, this wound, and how it was so hard and so difficult. I mean, literally when I was at the police station, I felt like a blizzard was like pushing me back. Like every obstacle was in front of me, like to stop me, because it was like gravity was working against me. It was just magnetically, it's like you've got two magnets that are the same and they push against each other. It was so hard for me to go there and do that. It was so painful and so traumatic. And so that's what I'd say about soul fractures, is that they are obviously traumatic. The way I'm explaining it now, I'm having a laugh and stuff. That's because I've healed it. And so it sounds easy, but when you have a soul fracture and you've got to deal with it, you've got to understand it will get better, but it's only going to work if you confront that head on and you attack it. And you when I say attack it, I'm saying you attack the issue. So the root issue was for me, that person. So I kept focusing on that person. I'm not going to let them define me. I'm not going to let them control me. I'm not going to let them have this over me. I'm going to, no matter how hard it is, no matter how painful, I'm going to punch through this. I'm going to push through it. And that's why I got a little bit sidetracked earlier. That's one thing I'd say, that the constable at the police station, she had this militant approach with me when I was documenting it all. And when I say militant, she didn't lollycoddle me. She didn't try, are you okay? How are you feeling? It's not like crap. For me, I needed someone that was really aggressive with me. I was like, when did this happen? How did this happen? Tell me here. What happened here? What do you mean by that? Describe this. Give me more information here. This date doesn't match up here because you said this. Like, I need it accurate. And she went hard on me. And it was the best thing ever because she forced it out of me. And I wanted it out of me, and I said that, but my ego was protecting me and blocking it. So that's why it was so hard, because I was suffering. Like, it felt like the end of the world for me dealing with this. So every step of the way, like with that particular police officer, I knew now I could sense something was happening between us energetically in the room, but I realized afterwards it's a third eye thing. So out my third eye, my soul, her soul are talking, and my soul's going, I need this, this, and this. Her soul's going, okay. Because I sensed that the police aren't aggressive like this normally, and it was really good for me to get that. So I got what I needed to help heal it, and that was the best therapy I ever got. Like that instead of it taking 3 months of me documenting and doing shadow work, like I had that initial burst of shadow work, but then by ripping it out of me in that session with an authority figure, because effectively I was terrified of authority figures, which is a pattern I've had in my life until now. Now I don't care because the issues are dealt with, but she was the authority figure, or she played that role, I should say. And so by me confronting her and telling her, and she being really hard on me, it pulled it out of me, and then it got it to where it needed to be, which is in external reality, on paper, documented, and then that really helped heal me. So, everyone's different, but I would say based on my experience, your ego is going to protect you and it's going to play games on you to help you, to protect you from any more pain and suffering. And you got to punch through that no matter how hard it is. Like it's going to be the most difficult thing you'll ever do, trying to heal a soul fracture. Once you do heal it, your life will fundamentally change forever. And once you're balanced between your masculine and feminine energies, whereas before I was just tipped right in the masculine energies, fight or flight, adrenaline, stimulate, stay busy, thinking, trauma equals drama. All that stopped, like it shifted dramatically. And I'm still balancing them because now it's a matter of fine tuning them, whereas before they were just so like this, whereas now I'd say it's very close to one another. So very close, whereas like that or that. So it's a matter of now fine tuning it, which has got to do with chakras and clearing and balancing and removing foods from my diet that are harmful, which I've been doing. Not drinking coffee anymore. I don't do that, and basically rarely touching alcohol. Avoiding refined sugars, soy, dairy, gluten, meat, fried foods, all that stuff. Just eating the most whole, natural, organic, and nutritious foods that I can that aren't processed. So yes, to heal a soul fracture can be done, and it's extremely painful, but it's so worth it. So what I'd say for you, if you're someone that you suspect may have a soul fracture, or you've got one, you're still trying to heal it, certainly go easy on yourself, be easy. Work on the body first. That was my experience. Like having started to heal this before I was even aware of it, unconsciously my soul was driving me towards healing this issue. I had already been working very hard to eat nutritious foods, going to health food stores. I'm not talking about going to chemists, but health food stores that specialize in organic vitamins, supplements, B complexes, all that sort of stuff. Like I take a very large amount of healthy supplements, and then I of course drink lots and lots of fluoride free water and eat lots and lots of vegetables, and I don't eat meat anymore, that sort of stuff. But I really was getting my body nourishing my soul, because you feed the ego, you nourish the soul. So I was really healing my body and getting it ready and supporting it and nourishing it so that I could deal with this. So nourishing the body, supporting it first, and then as you do that, you start to become aware of psychological barriers, programming, things where you act unconsciously, and you start to heal that. So cognitive behavioral therapy, shadow work by writing and journaling, allowing myself to express emotions. Even up until that point, I was very aware of shadow work and journaling because I'd done all that work. I'd been writing things out. I'd been using the completion process technique, which is a Hindu technique, and Teal Swan, who's a really good person on YouTube, she has a book about it as well, and she talks about it too, so she's really great. Go and check her out. But effectively, the completion process is where you visualize yourself, having been in a situation where you've been hurt by someone, your perception is they've hurt you, and so you allow yourself to go through those emotions and you visualize it, and then you imagine them apologizing to yourself, and then you accept their apology and you talk through the pain and suffering, and you allow yourself to experience everything, because it's a visualization technique where your mind, it can't differentiate, because that's the realm of the ego, between reality and effectively reality inside. It thinks it's one and the same. So the more that you can go through that and allow yourself to have those feelings and those experiences, the more your mind can effectively clear the programming. So the physical body, you have three bodies. The physical body has blockages, the mental body has programming, and then the spiritual body has restrictions. So the idea is once you start to clear blockages in the physical body, that gives you support and capacity to remove programs from the mental body, and then that in turn helps you lift restrictions on the spiritual body. So you regain more of your chi. Your chi flows throughout your body, and then when I went to see the shaman, as I talked about earlier, Sharif, I was then able to directly work with my soul, and I could feel it. Whereas if I just gone to the shaman doing this other stuff, I probably wouldn't have felt anything, and I would have perceived it through my ego as just being not working and not worthwhile. So that's why the way I went about it was like a 1, 2, 3 step. It was very, very logical upon retrospect, and my soul was driving it, even though I didn't know it consciously at the time because my ego was too strong. So seeing a shaman was the key, because he was able to clear stuff and pull it out, and cutting that cord. And they're the 3 steps effectively I took to heal my soul fracture. But yes, the soul fracture is deeply, deeply traumatizing, deeply, deeply painful, and it's a split. It locks you into separation. It's a split between your spirit and your ego, and effectively locking you and trapping you into the masculine energies, into the ego. And it's just and to probably to touch a little bit, if you look at things like satanic ritual abuse, which I've studied quite in depth, and you look at things like alien abductions, most alien abductions are not done by aliens. It's done by military-industrial complex, traumatizing people, taking things like blood samples, using sexual trauma as a way to really lock people in their lower 3 chakras and lower 2 and 3 chakras, and also as a way when they detect that people are a certain vibrational frequency. So people are effectively an advanced soul. They don't understand the soul. They don't get it because they view reality from a very masculine, ego-driven perspective. Therefore, they're interpreting people who are operating at a very high vibrational frequency as being having a negative agenda, being extraterrestrials in a human body. It's ridiculous. But these people believe this, and so what's happening is they're abducting people, taking genetic samples, blood samples, terrorizing them, pretending it's so ridiculous, pretending to be aliens, dressing up, and traumatizing them, chipping them, microchipping them, and then just dumping them back wherever if they don't murder them. And then effectively what they're doing is they've traumatized the person so heavily, and the person's probably blocked it out through their subconscious, that they not even aware of what happened. They know something happened or it's bad, but they don't know what happened, and they're trapped in their masculine energies. And this is the same thing with satanic ritual abuse, because I've studied and researched this in great detail, and I've been learning about the programming, the way they do all this. And people like Stephen Greer, who's an amazing doctor and researcher, he's got some amazing documentaries which I recommend viewing them all. And he talks about how extraterrestrials, alien abductions, are military-industrial complex, and they're going around doing this stuff and dressing up as aliens. And he's right. And there's a fantastic documentary called Missing 411, and they talk about this too. So it's quite a scary proposition, because for me, in comparison to that, what I dealt with is terrorizing and traumatic. But to add that kind of layer to it, satanic ritual abuse or military-industrial complex, alien abductions, like, it's just ridiculous. But it's the same set. It's the same it's the same process that's happening inside your mind, body, spirit. So regardless of what type of trauma, you don't need to think, oh, I'm embarrassed to say I had an alien abduction experience or satanic ritual abuse, because a lot of people are so terrorized they won't talk about it to anyone. It's all the same types of trauma. A soul fracture is a soul fracture. The way it happened varies, but the way that you address the issue is the same. As I said, physical body, clearing blockages; mental body, seeing a shaman, cutting cords. There's a way that this can be healed and treated, and it's effectively the same as say if you went to a GP and you have a bone fracture. I've never had one, but the way they would treat this, most general practitioners, there'd be a set of guidelines, a set of parameters upon which that they would operate from, or a book they refer to on how to treat this. And yes, the fracture itself might be varying degrees in length or thickness, or deep or shallow, whatever. But effectively, there's a certain way, and I imagine they would cast it, and they'd give you painkillers, and there's a certain way to heal it. This is no different. It's an energetic wound. It's happening on a soul level, vibrational, and it can be healed, and you can completely recover from it, like I did. So look, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments below, and please like, share, and subscribe if you liked it. If you didn't like it, please dislike it and let me know why. And I hope this was of help, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.